Hi, this is Pat Johnson, your psychology instructor, and in this mini lecture we're going to talk about classical conditioning, and the specific type is taste aversion. Taste aversion is classical conditioning. It's a specific type of classical conditioning, and it involves when we develop a really strong dislike to a particular food or beverage. So here's our definition. Taste aversion, a classically conditioned aversion. An aversion means a strong dislike of a food or even the thought or smell of the food. And let me give you an example from 1981. A long time ago in 1981, I was living in base housing at Camp Lejeune. I was about 18 or 19 years old. I was going to Coastal Carolina Community College. I was studying that day. I made a pot of chowder that day and had a bowl for lunch. I walked the dog. I cleaned house. I watched television. And later that night, I got the flu. And it wasn't a cold, it really was the flu. I had a 106-degree temperature. I was throwing up all over the place. I was sick as a dog, which is probably way too much information. But one of the things I threw up was chowder, and to this day I don't like chowder. So let's diagram this using the technique we've used all along and see what my taste aversion looks like. So let's start out with the response. The response would be nausea. And what originally caused the nausea? The flu did, and we don't have to learn that the flu causes nausea, so the flu would be an unconditioned stimulus causing an unconditioned response of nausea. And then right before the flu, or not right before the flu, hours before the flu, I had chowder. And I also watched television and walked the dog and cleaned house and did all sorts of other stuff. But I ate chowder, and then I got the flu, and I got nauseous, and then after that, chowder caused nausea. So chowder, which had been neutral, or actually I had liked it, now whenever I thought or smelled chowder, I got nauseous. So nausea to chowder would be the conditioned response. So again, looks something like this. Chowder came first, and that was the conditioned stimulus that used to be neutral. Then I got the flu, which would be the unconditioned stimulus. That happened next. I got nauseous with the flu, and that would be our unconditioned response. And then chowder makes me nauseous, so that would be the conditioned response, number 4. And that would be the conditioned response. There's lots of other examples you can come up with of taste aversion. You may have one of your own. I've had a lot of students give examples of taste aversion from drinking way too much alcohol, and it looks something like this. So they drank their favorite brand of alcohol. I've had a lot of tequila ones given by students, so we'll just pretend that this is tequila. And they got really drunk. Maybe they blacked out. They were super drunk. They were throwing up all over the place. And part of that is nausea. Okay, and now whenever you don't even have to drink it when you just smell that alcohol or think about drinking it, it also causes that nausea. And that would be a taste aversion to that alcohol. Maybe alcohol poisoning here. Okay, and we could come up with other examples. I've had students develop taste aversions from particular fast foods where they got sick on the fast food. Maybe they got the flu like I did, or maybe they got food poisoning or something like that, but they all develop taste aversions. Now, what I want you to think about is how taste aversion differs from most instances of classical conditioning. This is classical conditioning, but there's about 3 or 4 ways that taste aversion differs from a regular old Pavlov's dog example of classical conditioning or the other classical conditioning examples that we've gone over so far. So pause the video if you want to. That would be a good idea, and see if you can come up with any ways that taste aversion, which is a type of classical conditioning, differs from most instances of classical conditioning. And then we'll go through them. So first of all, it only takes one pairing of the CS and the US. I only had to pair chowder and getting the flu one time for me to not like chowder anymore. It only took one pairing. Also, there can be up to 24 hours between the CS and the US. If you remember in the Pavlov's dog scenario and other examples of classical conditioning, I said the optimal interval was about half a second. Well, we don't have to have that in taste aversion. In taste aversion, we can have up to 24 hours. In my aversion to chowder, I had about 6 hours between eating the chowder and getting nauseous from the flu. The CS can only be food or a beverage. In other words, think about the other stuff I did that day. I walked the dog, I watched television, I studied. None of those things that preceded getting the flu caused me to develop an aversion to them. The only thing that I got an aversion to was that food. And the last thing to know about taste aversions is they may never extinguish. They can be really hard to get rid of. Some people do get rid of their taste aversions, but I also know people who have had taste aversions that lasted 70 or more years. So that's taste aversion. It's a type of classical conditioning where we develop a strong dislike to a particular food after we get nauseated for some reason that can be totally unrelated to that flu, or to that food. Like in my example, I got sick from the flu, not from the chowder. But we develop a strong dislike to any food or beverage that precedes getting sick. And if you think about it, taste aversion makes a lot of sense as a mechanism that helps us stay alive. Let's suppose we are an animal and we're out in the wild and we get sick after eating a particular food. We don't want to have to repeat that experience numerous times because that could kill us. We want a brain that rapidly says to us, don't go back to any food that precedes getting violently ill. And so we have this mechanism called taste aversion that happens in an involuntary manner, and it keeps us alive. So that's taste aversion, a particular type of classical conditioning.